Hello, everyone. You're all looking beautiful this evening. So my name is Sadie, and I know you're all here to see me today, but just for a second, I want to pretend that I'm actually sitting in this audience here with all of you guys. And up on this stage, we see a young Palestinian man named Kareem, and he's a refugee. Now, Kareem is being given a guided tour of a soccer stadium in Munich by this taller, older German dude named Niels. And apparently, to keep in line with this notion of Willkommenskultur, or welcome culture, Germans do things now, like send newly arrived immigrants on bus tours throughout the country to visit popular cultural and historical sites. So, Kareem is walking about this stadium, and he appears to be both nervous but excited. And he's looking at this lush green soccer field with an almost longing. He interrupts Niels to ask, "How do we get onto this field? I want to run across the grass." To which Niels responds, "Nein, but why?" asks Kareem. And although Niels tries to explain, the pristine conditions under which the grass must be kept at all times, Kareem's disappointment only grows further. Now the dialogue fades out and the theater grows silent. The lights dim as a spotlight shines upon Kareem. He appears anxious, and he begins to pace back and forth along this fence surrounding the field as though he were just itching to feel the green grass beneath his feet. Okay, now we hear the sound of a drum beating. And at first it's pretty subtle, it starts slow, but gradually it grows louder and louder until it's pounding faster and faster. And then he jumps over this fence and onto the field. This glorious leap is followed by a series of parkour stunts all across the stage. Kareem appears to be flying, and just when you think he's satisfied, he performs a front flip off of the stage, landing just inches before the front row. He sprints about the audience, not once, not twice, but 3 times around, performing backflips and somersaults to each beat of the drum, leaving nearby audience members with their hands up and mouths wide. So, I too was sitting in the audience that day. And before I had really begun to process what I had witnessed, I felt goosebumps, climbing up my neck, and tears were streaming down my face. I remember seeing just one word flash over and over again in my head to each strike of the drum: freedom, freedom, freedom. So the scene that I've just described to you all is from a production of Winterreise, or Winter's Journey, put on by the Maxim Gorky Theater in Berlin. And the Gorky is really on this mission to reclaim the role of theater as both a social and a political force to be reckoned with. Now, this particular play consists of 7 professional actors from Afghanistan, Syria, and Palestine, as well as our 8th German actor, Niels. And Winterreise is kind of dealing with these actors' wide-ranging but real-life perceptions on the land of exile that has become of Germany. So now I want to ask you, how was it that I was able to connect to Kareem's longing for freedom in this new home? Well, to answer that, I want to turn first to the work of the political theorist Hannah Arendt. In The Human Condition, Hannah Arendt reconceives of the political as a form of action, which takes place in the realm of public appearance. And she defines freedom as not a personal property, but a collective creation. And so, Arendt calls for a plurality of perspectives in politics, requiring us first to register other perceptions on that reality in order to challenge our pre-existing frameworks of understanding. Now, Arendt's conception of the political, I believe, aims to create a more holistic understanding of who we are within a public and what we need. And that's something that needs to be renegotiated constantly, because these things also change. I believe that when we stop interrogating who it is that, we the people really are, then we relinquish our own agency and we essentially agree to let those in power decide that for us. Now, this brings me to the work of Richard Delgado, one of the early founders of critical race theory. Now, Delgado made the really worthwhile contribution of introducing the power of storytelling to the realm of legal scholarship. In A Plea for Narrative, Delgado brings to light the ways in which the voices of minority groups in this country, or those he refers to as outgroups, have been historically devalued and abnormalized by the mainstream. For this reason, it has always been necessary for outgroups to rely on storytelling as a way to build bonds and cohesion, but also common understanding amongst themselves. With these stories, however, Delgado asserts further that outgroups are also creating a kind of shared counter-reality to the dominant narrative, which gets perpetuated and reinforced by the mainstream. Now, Delgado reminds us that ideology functions to make the existing social arrangements appear both fair and natural, thereby deeming legitimate the power dynamics that are in play so long as this in-group story remains unchallenged. Counter-narratives can thus serve to subvert the status quo by shattering the illusions put forth by the dominant ideology and by negating the stereotypes and the stigmas being imposed upon their communities. In this way, I believe that Delgado is demonstrating to us that storytelling can actually enable outgroups to break free of an unjustified exclusion. Now, while I certainly find that Delgado's argument holds true in the legal context, I also believe that it can apply to the realm of everyday life. In her most recently published play, The White Card, Claudia Rankine writes in her introduction, quote, "Perhaps any discussion of racism does not begin on a position of equal footing for those involved. Perhaps the only way to explore this known and yet invisible dynamic is to get in a room and act it out. Now, theater is by its very nature a place for and of encounter." End quote. So, let's talk some more about the Gorky and on the influence of Bertolt Brecht on the world of German theater in particular. Bertolt Brecht was this really radical, like neo-Marxist playwright from the early 1900s. And I think his most enduring influence comes from this style known as epic theater, which he both theorized extensively on, but also really brought to life in his own plays. And his writings on this technique proposed essentially that a play should not aim to have spectators identify emotionally with the characters or any of the action on the stage. Instead, Brecht argues that a play should serve to provoke rational self-reflection from the audience and a critical view of that which is taking place. So why is this important? Well, Brecht's didactic technique really set the tone for centuries to come in both his home of German theater, but also across the world. Brecht was determined that epic theater could have the audience leaving each production with an enlightened awareness of self and of nation. He thought that plays could change how people think and how they related to one another in their everyday lives. And this is exactly what the Gorky Theater is trying to do. By bringing to the fore those voices at the margins, the Gorky is trying and working to complicate and to challenge German preconceptions around identity and nationhood in order to allow for something new to arise in their absence. The Gorky is creating a counter-narrative, and one that includes the experiences of migrants themselves. So, keeping all of this in mind, let's finally come back to Niels and to Karim. The scene that I described to you all at the beginning of this talk, I believe presents a perfect example of a Brechtian moment. The minimalist set design, the harsh white lights upon the stage, and the actors way too close for comfort engagement with the audience. These are elements that serve not only to trigger the spectators emotionally and affectively, but also to paralyze them in thought. In a later scene of Winterreise, Niels approaches Karim during a private exchange and he asks him, "Are you finally free now in Berlin?" To which he responds, "No, because my heart is in Palestine and Palestine is not free." Through drama, comedy, and the power of affect, the Gorky Theater has managed to transform the theater stage into a platform for political debate. It has brought people with histories and a present so inextricably linked and ridden with conflict and prejudice into the same room just to act it all out. I believe that theater models like the Gorky can serve at the very least to enable us to have more meaningful and transparent conversations with one another. And everyday conversations matter because formal equality has always been and will continue to be driven by changes first within the culture. Today, we face a crisis globally framed around migration and borders and increasing diversity. As we bear witness to a resurgence of white supremacist attitudes and behaviors around the world, I believe that creating safe and public spaces for marginalized individuals to be seen and to be heard and to tell their own stories is essential. Thank you.